Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, Life, Law, Bin. We've hopefully advanced from that paper sift based on your brilliant tips, and we're at the interview stage of the application. How can we best prepare? Because we know that the first rung, we have to get past that first rung in order to succeed in that second rung. So let's start with maybe some preparation tips.
Yeah. So what I did was I started keeping tables of, I had 3 tables. One was general legal current affairs. The second was topical family law issues. And that was things like, so for last year, things like transparency in family courts, remote hearings, all very popular. And then the third table I kept was family law cases, so big reported cases that could come up in interviews. I sourced this information from a variety of things. I signed up to the Inner Temple Daily Current Awareness email, which is excellent, and everyone should be on it. It is a little bit overwhelming because they do email you every single day, and you're often like, no, not today, I don't want to read it. But it is really good to say once a week, go through those emails, pick out things that are relevant to family law, go and read a bit more about them, add them to your tables with a little summary and maybe a link to the website. That's what I did for mine. I also listened to the family law podcast, I think it's called, from Pump Court. There's so much to listen to, and again, you'll get current hot topics in family. And also Family Law Week is a website where people do case summaries on things that are going on. And again, there's a monthly newsletter that talks about hot topics and big cases. And I think it's very much worth reading those and again, making notes. It's actually helpful to do that before the written application stage as well, because you might get a question on tell us about a case that you're interested in, that you've read recently that you're interested in, and that's the perfect place to go to look for something that is popular. Although don't go for the most popular, I'd say go for like the second tier popular thing. Don't write about what everyone else is going to write about. Yes, so that is what I did all the way through this the interview process. I was just constantly updating my knowledge, trying to keep in the swing of things, because if you're also doing the bar course, it's very easy to just want to put your head down in that and not focus on anything else. So it is very important to keep all of your knowledge up to date.
Yeah, that's important. That's very key. Now, are there any tips that you'd suggest for those second rung? Well, before we get to second rung interviews, what can people expect when they walk into a first rung interview? Because some people may not know anything about what's the difference between a first rung and what to expect in a second. So, what can people expect in that first rung?
Well, I think nowadays, and I don't know how it's going to work this year, first round is very possibly going to be on Zoom. So most of my interviews last year, sometimes first and second rounds were on Zoom. I had a couple of second rounds that were in person. So be ready for it to be potentially online or potentially in person. It might even give you the option. I found that first round interview questions were generally in 2 parts. So the first part would be questions like, why do you want to be a barrister? Why family law? Often just repeating what you've already done in your written applications. So make sure you have those answers at the tips of your fingers. They'll expect you to know them. If you go into an interview and stutter about why do you want to be a barrister, they're going to be like, what's going on here? And then the second round of the interview, second part of the interview, of the first round interview, was normally either a problem question that was sent to you 30 minutes in advance, or it would be a debate style topical question. And the favorite of last year, which I was asked in about 4 interviews, was, are remote hearings a good thing? Is it good for access to justice or not? Pick a side, argue it. But remote hearings came up in basically every interview I did. So be ready for, that's why it's so important to know what's going on in family law at the time, because you will find that they will just go for the most obvious question often, and you need to be ready to speak on that. There's no time to go and look it up or really even to think about it. So something else that I was doing before my first round interview is that I was thinking about every question they might possibly ask me, and I was coming up with 3 points for and 3 points against, and that just made things so much easier. I found that a lot of the questions that I prepped did actually come up in the interview, and it looks very impressive. I mean, they don't really care whether you're very good at speaking off the top of your head or whether you've just done so much prep work that you're ready for anything. It's going to be the same at the bar. As long as you're performing on the day, it doesn't really matter how you got there. So yeah, do those do the work beforehand. It makes you feel so much more confident going into the interview. Problem questions sent in advance, they don't expect you really to know much about family law, really, or just like law in general. Most of the stuff that you need is within the question. What they're looking for is, can you work under pressure, deal with information quickly? And a lot of the problem questions were conference style. So it would be, you've been given some information about a client, you're representing them in court in 20 minutes time. What questions would you need to ask them about this case? What would you need to discuss? And so they want to see how you would act in that scenario. It could be that the interviewer will play the client. And then they want to know that you've got to grips the question, you're asking the right questions, you know what's going on. That's very much your first round interview. It pretty much goes the same every single way. They'll often ask you about your interests at the start or at the end, either to make you feel settled or to end on a light point, and say that at that point, that's when you really want to show your personality. I always was a bit more informal when I answered those questions. I, big smile, maybe told a joke about it. That's again them testing. Would I sit on a train for a couple of hours with you, and would I be okay having a chat with you?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I automatically started thinking about the preparatory aspect of it, where you said that you can actually have a list of questions or a list of topical issues and put down 3 points for, 3 points against. Just for the person out there who may not know, I know for a fact that you can get that kind of information from maybe your career service. Sometimes they have a document where they have those kind of topical issues, and you can just sit and kind of prep them in advance. I also know as well that you can maybe even ask people that obtain pupillage if they still have their kind of preparation pack, and if they would be willing to share that with you. If you have anything else to assist in how people can find those kind of hot topic debate issues aside from reading and that kind of thing, any other resources, feel free to share.
I did find that my careers service at uni was really good for that. Anna again put together a really good pack of topical questions. Also, she gathers information every year about questions that have been asked in previous years. So that's really good guidance as to not just generally what's hot, but also what a particular chambers might like to ask about. So definitely use the services that are available to you. They are very helpful, and these people that are running them know what's what. They've been working in this area for years, and they are in some ways sharing the knowledge of all the students that have come before you. So use them.
Yeah, and hopefully I know that there's some universities that still provide that kind of service for graduates. So hopefully
Mm-hmm.
you can still tap into that. And if you can't, the inn, I'm sure, can assist you with those kind of things. If you have a mentor one, or if you are part of a scheme where you've submitted kind of like a mock application for someone to review and you have a mock interview. So I feel like the inn kind of fills that gap when you think you've long passed university, and you can't access those services. Now, are there any other top tips that you think people should bear in mind when basically walking into that interview? I know people sometimes get nervous. Is there anything
Mm-hmm.
else? Because sometimes you can prepare and nerves can get the best of you.
If we're talking first round interview specifically, I would say that they want you to do your best. I know it sounds a bit cliched again, but they don't really want to sit there for 20 minutes while someone is having a panic. And that means that if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, the best thing you can do is to say, well, I'm thinking this, but I'm not sure, maybe this. Say something, and they will probably want to support you. They'll, guide you down the right direction, what they want to know from your answer. Don't be afraid to say, sorry, were you asking me this or were you asking me this? If you're not too sure, say something, and chances are, the interviewer will engage with you, and you will be, off and going, before you know it. I think the worst thing you can do is to just not say anything, or to say, I don't know, because that doesn't give them anything to work with.
Excellent. And I think as well for for the second wrong as well, I know people say sometimes that's the advocacy based interview. So do you think people should maybe be reviewing their notes, maybe some tips or so how to prepare yourself before you conduct yourself in terms of advocacy? Are there any tips per se when people are getting
Mhm.
ready to kind of make that kind of presentation to the panel?
So I found that most of my family interviews, they were not asking me to actually do an application, not in the way that you do on the bar course. So we're not talking about a bail application, or I think with one of my interviews, I did a civil application, but that was for a common law set. So that kind of was to be expected. Most of the family ones, I mean, if the second round interview is more advocacy based. So if I can sort of talk about that and what I had for those. So quite a few chambers asked me to create a presentation for 5 minutes, either on a topic of my choice or on a topic that they gave me. And so very much they were just looking for my ability to talk for 5 minutes. Some of them it was to argue a particular side of things, and for some of them it was more just general. And I think when you're preparing those kinds of things, make sure that if you're arguing one side, that you've also prepped the other side, because they love in an interview to
Flip it.
listen to you speak for 5 minutes and then go, okay, now argue the other side, or okay, but what about this? But what about this? And so you need to be ready for all angles. Um, I think a common question you also get in second round interviews is there a law that you would reform? And if yes, why? That comes up quite a lot. So be ready for that. As well as being the more advocacy side of the second round interview being more of the advocacy interview, you're often likely to get an ethical question. So prep your core duties. I didn't get any ethical questions in the first round, but I did get quite a few in second rounds. So make sure you know the core duties. Helps be able to trot out which number of core duty that is, and know which take precedence and stuff. That's very key for the third round. And then I would say third round, second round, and then I would also say that don't separate too much in your mind. This is a first round interview, this is a second round interview, they are different. Because where I got tripped up in the second round interview is that I was asked a question, why do you want to be a family barrister, which I would consider as a first round interview question, and I had answered it 10 times over in my first round interviews. It had all gone swimmingly. Second round interview, I was asked the question and I sat there like, oh my goodness, I know I should know the answer to this question. I've answered it many times before, but I was just so thrown that I was being asked that question. So don't, keep on top of all of those, core questions, and keep on top of your current affairs as you're moving from first round to second round, because really anything goes in an interview, and you need to be prepared for any scenario.
That's key because I think sometimes they also want to see how you're going to operate under pressure, or operate if things don't go according to your little plan in your head.
And I would say that actually some of the interviews that I did best in, or that I did well in, I got the second round interview, or I got the pupillage offer, were those ones where I came out thinking, oh my goodness, that was a proper argument. They were tearing apart every single thing I said, and I didn't feel like it was going well. But I think that often at those points, the reason that they're pushing you is because they think that you can push back, and they're trying to test how you would be in a court situation, with the other side arguing against you and the judge saying, well, that point's awful. So they want you to be able to, not that anyone told me that my point was awful in the interview, by the way,
Of
they were
course.
all very nice. But they were really pushing me. And there was, one interview I went into and I thought, oh my gosh, like they're really going for it. I don't stand a chance. So I just sat there and I was making the most ridiculous points, in my opinion, in my defense. I just kept, they were batting them away and they were giving me more points, and I was just trying to come up with anything. But then, I got through to the second round, and I think that what they were really looking for was, could you deal with the pressure? Could you keep speaking even when you've sort of got to the point where there is nothing left to say? And I think that they're just testing if you can cope with that. So just keep going, and don't ever think that it's all gone wrong and there's no point, because quite often, if you're feeling that way, it's because they're interested in you and they are wanting to test you properly.
Yeah, it's true because I think sometimes we forget that becoming a barrister or practicing, there's a client's life on the line. Doesn't matter which area you're practicing in, there is someone who is heavily vested in that outcome. And ultimately, you don't want someone who just gives up at the first sign of opposition. So you
Exactly.
really can't just say, you know what, that's an excellent point. We can see and sit down.
I will sit down now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just no. So we're gonna end it on this point now, Rosanna. What are some things that people should definitely not do at interviews? You should be avoiding these things now, people. These are the do
Okay.
nots.
These are the do nots, and some of them are going to seem obvious, but I've seen it happen. So, firstly, whether the interview is on Zoom or in person, show up on time. Nothing looks worse than being tardy. With Zoom interviews, there's an extra difficulty in that you also can't show up too early, because a lot of chambers are doing their interviews on Zoom. They don't have a fresh room for each person. So, and some of them haven't figured out how to hold people in a waiting room. So you join the interview and you are joining the person in front of you's interview if you turn up too early. And that actually happened to me. And it didn't throw me when it happened. It didn't happen. I didn't do it. It happened to me. Someone did it to me. Sorry, my alarm's just gone off. And um, they were not impressed. Their person had shown up 10 minutes early, and I know that they wanted to be there and wanted to be ready. But often in the interview, in the email that you get inviting you to interview, they will say, join on time because we're all in the same room. And you really need to listen to that. I'd say the perfect time to join a Zoom is 1 or 2 minutes beforehand. Have it all up and ready, so you literally just have to click join, but don't actually join until the time. I'd say another common mistake is being overly formal. I've said it quite a few times today, but barristers, they are looking to see that you have a personality. Obviously, they need to trust that you can be put in front of a client and are not going to swear in front of that client or be inappropriate. But they also, particularly in family, it's client-facing role. You need to be able to build rapport. You need to be able to be friendly and warm. So I think don't feel that you have to be sort of super prim and proper and not show any of your personality. They actually want to see that. So particularly for those questions like, what are your interests? What are your activities? Tell me about this thing you've put down in your CV. Use those opportunities to show a bit of personality. Then one other thing, and I don't know whether this is controversial or not, but I had a couple of in-person interviews, and you're often put in the same room as the person after you, because people show up early, because understandable. I would say don't engage with those candidates other than being polite, saying hello, how are you today, and then when they go in, best of luck, hope it all goes well. Do not get into a discussion about how it's going for them more generally, and how many interviews they've had, and because it doesn't make anyone feel good. If they've done better than you, you're not going to feel good. If they have not done better than you, then you're probably making them feel bad. And it's just better not to have those discussions, just to be polite, be friendly, wish them luck, but stay focused on yourself. Don't worry about what everyone around you is doing. So those are my top things to avoid. And can I just say one thing that I think everyone should be doing during interviews? When you get out of that interview, write down the questions you were asked. It's often the last thing that you want to do when you get out of an interview is to rehash it all in your head and remember what was asked. But it's so valuable. So many of the first round interviews follow very similar lines. They're asking the same questions. if you had a question that you had never come across before and you weren't sure about the answer to, go away, prep that question, come back, because chances are your next interview, they will ask the same question. And this time you're ready. And there's nothing worse than kicking yourself, being like, I was asked that last time, but I didn't want to face what happened in that interview. And so I didn't prep it. Just build up a list of questions. And, in the event that this is not your year and maybe next year's your year, it's going to put you in such a great position next year. You may think you're going to remember what happened, you won't, trust me. And having all those questions written down, being ready to do it all over again is really good. So yeah, keep a note.
Thank you, Rosanna. That was definitely a mouthful, but it was accurate. It was thorough, and that's definitely what people need who are gearing up to apply for pupillage. Now, Rosanna is also one of the co-organizers of the Young Bar Mentorship Scheme. We're not going to go into that today because we want you to come back for more to to view Rosanna, you, and Nicholas Leah, who's the other co-organizer, who will have a chat with us at a later date about pupillage as well, but they will team up and they will speak about this wonderful scheme that is there to assist students. But Rosanna, for now, we are going to call it a close. We're going to conclude our session today. You've been fantastic. You've been super helpful. We are grateful for your preparation. So thank you so much for coming on today, Rosanna.
Thank you so much for having me, Nia. I did say I had a lot to say, and I feel like I've just been speaking a mile a minute.
No, no, no. We love it because the thing about it is people always want knowledge and something that's thorough because that's the only way we can learn. So if you came here chinking on the information, then people really wouldn't be gaining anything. So we're really grateful and we're indebted to you.
Thank you so much for having
Thanks,
me.
Rosanna. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again on the next video. Bye, everybody.